Intrigued? Me too. And that's what we're going to talk about today, FPV. Hey Jovanka, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Let's dive right into it. Tell us about FPVs.
Okay, so FPVs, or first-person view drones, initially or originally were basically invented or built for races, so for racing purposes. But then nowadays they've become, I would say, the latest trend. They're like very hot in aerial media, photography and filming. And the reason why is because, as you can see here, we have an FPV little drone, and it is so small and light, so it actually enables it to be much superior and faster than traditional drones. Another difference from the FPV and the traditional drones is the fact that not only it can fly through a lot of small areas that are not easily accessible with a ground photography and camera, I would say, but it's also the live transmission. So basically the FPV pilot gets the video transmitted live through these goggles here. So that's another difference from the FPV and the traditional drones as well.
That's interesting. So how would we know where we're going to use FPV versus, say, aerial filming?
I would say ideally the FPV drone would be for indoor places. So if you want to capture any office space or F&B venue, real estate property, or any of that sort, like, it's best to use the FPV because it's small and it's fast, so you can basically quickly get done with the idea of showcasing the actual place. When it comes to outdoor, we do not suggest FPV if it's let's say if you want to have an excellent quality of a very a long distance or a long height from up. And also another thing for photos, so the FPV doesn't do photos, so we can do only videos with it.
Interesting. Okay. And you mentioned that it's fast, and that's the way that everybody can showcase the business. But what is it about FPV, and what is it about the footage that ends up being different from your regular videography?
So another thing that I would say any business who wants to step up their game and wants to basically get ahead of the crowd would be in love with the idea of using the FPV in their business. It's because let's say if you have so many wonderful museums, for example here in the UAE, that they have such high ceilings that when you do it with a normal video you don't really get the feel or the idea of how big is it actually. But when you fly with the FPV you can go up and down and around, let's say if you have big sculptures again, so it can really show, and you actually get a virtual tour of the place, so you get a feel as if you are right there.
That's interesting, because I think not only would that show the bigger picture, but also this the minute details of the space that you want to showcase. So Jovanka, tell us, what are some of the industries that are already into FPVs, and where do you think FPVs would be most beneficial to, in which industries?
I always used to say that FPV you can implement basically anywhere. So if I could pick out a couple, let's say places that we've done FPVs with would be hospitality, real estate. We've done FPVs for an education center, for a museum, as well as clinics or hospitals. So it can be done for literally anything. Doggy daycare center. So it's very fun, honestly. But I think if I have to pick out, let's say, two industries, it would be hospitality and real estate. So if I go through a little bit on why I picked out these two, let's say real estate. I'm sure everyone has been at a point in their life where you're picking out a place to rent or buy, and when you open any portal to search for it, every other looks very similar. So you're just wondering what is the difference except the pricing. So again, when you implement FPV, you create a virtual tour of the place. And I think after the COVID as well, people feel safer to actually look something up online first, and then if they feel that it's good enough to visit, they're going to visit the place. So instead of using still photography, you can use the FPV drone and actually showcase how big the area is, how big is the property, what is the surrounding of it, why is it special. So you can capture all of that with the FPV, and you're making sure your property listed stands out from the rest of it. And then hospitality as well. Obviously, we've got a lot of F&B venues, hotels here in the UAE, so we have plenty of choice when it comes to picking out where to go for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So again, what's a better way, in my opinion, to showcase not only the concept, the uniqueness of your venue, but also to showcase a daily routine of what it's like to sit there, what's the vibe, what's the energy you get sitting there, what's the view, like the sunlight you're getting and everything. So all of that can be again captured with FPV.
I definitely agree with you on that, because a couple of months back when I was looking at properties to rent, and there were like all these pictures and they look like, you know, so similar, and it's like just from like, you know, that one particular angle that, oh, like this is going to be your hall, this is going to be your bedroom, this is going to be your kitchen. So I think like a virtual tour of, you know, not just the inside but the outside, like you rightfully mentioned, the surrounding, the environment, how exactly it is that you're going to enter the building, to what exactly it is that you're going to see from inside your house as well. That's quite useful. And even hospitality, like you mentioned, I think that's a really creative way to showcase and display one of the most creative spaces I think that we see, especially when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to hotels. So I definitely agree with you on that. And speaking of which, I think a lot of people have this question as well. What about permissions? Because we know that, you know, drones require permits and licenses and such. So what about FPVs then?
Until recently, there were no permits for FPV because it was flown basically indoor, so there was no issue. But since a month ago or so, there is a DFTC, so only one permit for Dubai TV Film and Commission, which is implemented, and it takes less than a week, I would say, for approval. So just so basically the government has an idea and keeps track of what we're doing in terms of media in the country. So that's the only permit at the moment.
Okay, so if anybody wants to, you know, showcase their business using FPV, then they would probably have to schedule it in a way that they reach out to you, like say a week or 2 weeks prior to when they want it.
Usually that's in general. Even before the permits, it takes around a few weeks for us to set a date and for them to prepare the venue first, and then to prepare the staff, who's going to be there, what we're going to do, is it going to be staged with guests, is it going to be an empty venue. So in general it takes a few weeks for us to set up and decide on the date. So I don't think it's going to change a lot with the permit itself.
So Jovanka, how does the client have to prepare when you're shooting or before you're going to shoot an FPV? Are there any things that they have to take into consideration before you go and shoot the FPV at their venue?
So the easiest scenario is when the venue is completely empty. So we just go there, fly, and we're done. But when there is an actual setup, so it's I would say a staged video, then we have to have their staff included. Let's say if it's a restaurant, so they can actually basically do their routines while we shoot. So it's whether it can be preparing a certain food or a beverage. So they have to prepare that part, and we have to do a couple of shots, so we know we have the best one at the end. And I would say just for the venue itself to be in the best possible state.
Keeping it clean.
Keeping it clean, yes. And what usually helps is that, so for most of the venues, we try to do the flight before their operation hours. So we make sure there are no walk-ins, because it disturbs definitely, because people start looking at the drone itself, so it disturbs the whole video or the whole idea. Yes,
yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So Jovanka, I think I'm gonna get you in a little bit of trouble for asking this question, but what has been your most favorite location to shoot the FPVs at?
Okay, this is a tough one because I've personally had fun at each one of them, because I think every place that we've done so far with FPV has been incredibly beautiful and gorgeous. I think all of the venues are. Dubai does put an effort in that sense. But if I have to pick out one that kind of caught my attention the most, I would say I would choose Roca restaurant. It's one of Zuma's concepts, and it's in Business Bay, and it's I think it opened just half a year ago or so, and I enjoyed it a lot because, first of all, everyone there from their staff were not only, you can tell they're enjoying themselves, but they were really like invested into it, so it was really fun to shoot. And another thing, that the venue itself is beautiful, and they have the gorgeous view from their balcony of Burj Khalifa. So all together, and the video at the end, it was just wonderful.
Wow, that's interesting. I think we definitely need to go there on a work date soon.
Yes. An after work happy hour.
Ooh, that sounds like a plan. All right. So guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them to us. I know you're going to have plenty of them after this very knowledgeable session with Jovanka. Please hit us up on inquiry@feds or 800 drones, and do follow us on social media. Thank you.